Here we go.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michaels, and welcome to the Science of Fantasy Football. Why the Science of Fantasy Football? Well, you get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method, and that is guaranteed to be a smarter way to look at statistics. Why can I make such an outlandish statement? It's just because the scientific method means we're going to let the statistics guide us to an answer rather than cherry picking statistics to back up what we were already thinking. And joining me as he does each and every week, because he is the fantasy professor, he's a real professor, retired now. It's
Yep.
John Bush. And John, I am so thankful that the NFL draft will be here this week because in my last count, I think the fantasy football experts have told me that there are 75 skill position players that are likely to go in the first round. Man, that's going to be a heck of a first round.
Wow, they just need to expand. Just everybody gets everything here. How wonderful. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to be listening to what Dennis says. I liked your article that we're going to talk about, your opportunity article. I think it's a nice beginning. I've got some questions for you. We'll get into that, but yeah, I will just casually read Twitter and be in and out watching because I probably have to watch family baking shows and important stuff in it. So that's what I'll be doing.
Well, I'll be doing a guest appearance for a very
Nice.
short time. I emphasize a very, very short time, but I'll be hanging out with the Dynasty dog Mike, Michael Anthony, and his gang over there. Will be
Uh-oh.
having a special podcast live during the draft, and I am going to be their Kansas City Chiefs commenter for the
Uh-oh.
first pick, picking number nine. You know, Chiefs not used to picking number nine, and I'll come on for a very short time. Emphasis on short visit because they'll be only bringing me on for that pick, and then I'll be gone for the rest of the draft. But giving a giving my prediction for the Chiefs, and then a reaction to the Chiefs. Very quick, but look up Michael Anthony, Dynasty Dog Mike on Twitter, and you'll find where that's going to be. But Professor, I attempted this week to look at the data and look at the depth charts post free agency and
Yeah.
try to come up with my predictions, not of specific players necessarily, but of needs for different teams and where they might be spending that really high draft capital.
Yeah. So folks, we're sharing, recording this first look at opportunity by team before the draft. It's already out. And Dennis, I'm going to let you introduce this concepts and things and tell us what your information is here. And I've got a couple questions on how you're defining this. You can, we looks like we've got team by team. I don't know if you want to hit every team, but it is what it is, and you can start it off.
Yeah, and eventually where we want to be is by thinking in probabilities. But before we can really think in probabilities, we need to get to a basic idea of need. I've done research in the past using my MVP index, only one
Mhm.
index, folks. So that opens us up to some possible issues, but it's a basic look on need on a team by team basis. And what I've found is if the incumbent running back, and it works better for running back than it does for other positions, but the theory is used for all positions. if the incumbent running back posted an MVP index less than 80 the year before, a team is probably not going to be happy with that player. And an 80 MVP index is top 20. And a team wants to have better than a top 20 running back in their backfield. Now, sometimes they can't find one in the draft, and they end up with their regular starter that they had last year, or they end up with a new starter that they brought on free agency. But every team that made a big change, their player was 80 or below the year before. So it's based on a theory that, the research said that this happens. It doesn't mean that if a team had a running back with less than an 80 MVP, that guy won't be their starter again. It just means that everybody who got replaced was under 80. That's pretty good, because over the course of the 4 years I studied, that was about 50 players. So I was pretty happy with the fact that that was the bar that they had to reach. So the opportunity index, the first way I look at this is, where were the different positions, running back and wide receiver specifically, versus that 80 points? And that's the opportunity index that you see in this article. It's not the finished product, so it doesn't give you any percentages yet. All it says is that the higher the opportunity index at this point, the more likely the team is looking to replace that position. And look at an example that you got up on the screen. It's the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, Drake London is solid. Nobody's likely to necessarily replace Drake London as the top wide receiver on the Atlanta Falcons, but WR2 is a thing, okay? And if you look at the guys they have on the roster, they're pretty solid for like WR3 guys. Zacchaeus and Dotson are not lousy, or they wouldn't be in the league, but they're not great. They're not reliable starters. So if you look at their MVP, it's going to fall 30 points shy of that 80 point threshold. So the opportunity index for Atlanta, the need to add a wide receiver is 30 points, which is pretty high. If you look at all the teams that are out there.
What's the highest?
The highest, I think, was 45, was the highest at WR2 in the league. I think that was Buffalo. But the number itself, the higher the number, the more likely they are to be going shopping. But any value in that WR2 or even WR1, some teams have a WR1 that failed to reach that 80 threshold, or unlikely to reach that 80 threshold in MVP index. MVP is a measure of upside consistency. That's all it is. It grades what a player does every week, gives a point score for each possible outcome of the three outcomes that you could have. You can really have a big game. You can have just a little over median. You actually have four outcomes. You can have just below median, but not really crappy. And then you can have less than 5 points, which is a horrible result on a weekly basis for your starting wide receiver in fantasy football, and gets penalized as such. So it's looking at players that consistently score well above median. If you're 80 or above, that's pretty solid. 80 or above at wide receiver is usually the top 22. So that's a starting wide receiver.
MVP.
In your lineup, in MVP.
Yeah.
Just a basic look at upside consistency. It's been successful in guiding me to the right players, but more so, the opportunity index, it has not been as useful at wide receiver as quarterback, at running back.
Being a need index?
It is a need index at this point. You're
Yeah.
correct. But
I'm just wondering because to me, when I saw opportunity, I was thinking probability. And
well,
so if 30 is relative to 45, this is about a 70% need. That what I'm saying is that might have been easier to think
yes.
about. I mean, I can calculate that for you if I get time, but 70% need. So to me, when I see the word 70%, they need a WR2. Atlanta does.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
how I think about that.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate. Now, here's the thing. They might have bigger needs
Yeah,
on the team
right. Defense,
versus
line. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who's available, all that kind of stuff. So Zacchaeus or Dotson might end up being a reliable WR2 this year.
So the
But
first thing that I think, Dennis, when I'm seeing this, is I'm thinking, do I want, are these going to be free squares that I might pick as a injury handcuff to Drake London? In other words, somebody that I get for a dollar or even pick up in the draft at position 20 that if he got hurt, they might have some value. That's how I would look at those two.
yes, and I would look at both of those players as having a better likelihood of fitting in a best ball team than a redraft
Yes.
team.
Yes.
In best ball, I am looking at all upside with those late picks.
Right.
And if they don't add a rookie at wide receiver, I'll take Zacchaeus and Dotson with a late pick. I'm not sure which one I'd value over the other, to be
Right.
honest with you. But I would consider taking either of those guys, not only because they could be injury replacement if something happened to Drake London, but just because there's only one football, there's going to be, you know, but there's going to be multiple. Drake London is not going to catch 100% of the passes. Okay, so who's going to be the second guy that could get a touchdown for you? That's what I look for in best ball, more so than in redraft. In redraft, I don't want my backup wide receivers necessarily to be guys that are only going to be valuable if the starter if the top dog goes down. And last year, Professor, we did some research on the fly and showing very few of those second target guys on a team were really valuable enough to be more than a flex starter. There were exceptions. Devontae Adams was an exception. But for the most part, I want that top target guy at wide receiver. I don't want the second one. And yeah, George Pickens was another example. But for every example of a good guy, I can give you Darnell Mooney, who had a horrible season as the second banana for Atlanta. If if I'm going to go to that second wide receiver on a team, it's got to be a really great passing team. But in best ball, it's got to be just who's going to get some targets. And I will go deeper than one to get the guy that's going to get targets. But that's how I came up with this. But you're right. At this point in the process, it's more of a need index than a true opportunity index at this point.
Yeah, that's what if I had time, I think I would uh, change that. But anyway, is there any team we want to really, the floor is yours. We got a few teams to go through.
Yeah, if you look at certain teams, you can see that uh, they're more
Here's
needy
a
than others.
45 for WR2 at
Yes,
Carolina. That's the highest I've seen so far. Is there
yes, there
any
is.
you want for me to go through? Chicago doesn't have any.
No, Chicago did not show up with anybody that
So do the
would
Bengals.
would
Yeah.
have a need at that point.
Browns
But
have a 45.
but you
Yeah.
can also see in my discussion of the Bears,
Mhm.
I said I wouldn't be surprised if they added another running back in the draft pretty early.
Yeah.
Now with the Bears, I think they will add a wide receiver, but I think that wide receiver will be mainly a guy who can replace Luther Burden in the kick return game. I don't think they
Uh,
want to use Luther Burden or Rome Odunze returning kicks. So they probably will get another running back or another wide receiver, but there really isn't a need index at either position because they've got a pretty good core right now.
mhm. So what I would recommend for people is look through Dennis's discussion, write what he says, but maybe even before that, you go through each team. You look at the depth chart. I think ourlads.com or some of these other places has depth charts. Maybe let you, what's your need? What do our listeners think? And then look at then read what Dennis says, put your diary and see were you right or was Dennis wrong? Throw a rotten tomato at him here. and but this is an opportunity because this gives you some advantage in early best ball, like's going on right now. If you're good at this, Dennis, if I was really
Oh,
talented,
yeah.
I'd be drafting some best ball now if I was good at it. Or if you've made money in best ball before and you really hone down on you doing this need concept and you're ahead of the game, you could find some bargains right now.
Yes, that's very true. I'm not so sure I'm great at it before the
Hmm.
draft.
Hmm.
Okay, that's the key here for me. But when I looked through and I did I've done one best ball pre-draft. Okay. I grabbed a wide receiver that a rookie wide receiver that I'm not even all that high on.
Right.
But it got to the point in the draft where Omar Cooper from Indiana was still on the board.
Hmm.
And there, I needed another wide receiver. That was the judgment call I made. And I grabbed him. And he'll probably end up with a WR2 or a WR3 starting position in the league. I just don't know how great he's going to be. But my track record is not great at identifying rookies until I see where they're going to be. And that's how
Right.
the opportunity index came about is trying to identify where the strengths and weaknesses on a roster were and try to see if I could figure out who's going to break through at that position. You got the Baltimore Ravens up. That's a
Right.
classic example. Rashad Bateman has been awful. Like he's been so bad. Hopkins is gone,
Hmm.
and they really don't have anybody else. Devontae Walker is about the only other guy on the roster right now.
Hmm.
They have a real need to grab another wide receiver. You notice I didn't say replacing Zay Flowers because I think Zay Flowers is pretty solid,
Hmm.
but they need a second wide receiver and they probably need a tight end to go. That Likely's gone.
You didn't
Mark
put
Andrews,
opportunity index for
I didn't
tight.
put an opportunity because I think Mark Andrews exceeds that starting position, but they need a backup plan for Andrews. And right now, they really don't have one. Like they don't have an established guy other than blocking tight ends.
Hmm.
I'm talking about guys that we'd be thinking about in fantasy football.
Hmm. So what I'd like I said, when Dennis does this, folks, I would print this out and I would uh, mark some of these and just put them to the side and start thinking when you start drafting later this summer. Circle back through this and just put a little star in your cheat sheet and just kind of like I said, look what you think, but look what Dennis thinks. And again, there are other people out there that are sharp. This is an opportunity for you to kind of cherry pick some sources that your diary says next year. It's like, yeah, they were pretty good, and wide receivers or tight ends or something. I mean, it gives you an idea, start building where your expertise is. I think if you build what you're good at, that inspires you to do more research. If a lot of people don't do well at fantasy football because they can't delay their gratification. If you're the person
Yes.
that that you're to roulette and the ball's spinning and you're like banging on the table, hurry up, you probably don't have the patience to do fantasy football because it takes how many weeks to finally see your ideas gelled together. I mean, I could imagine your head is already exploded after about the first snap. You will see at game one, Dennis, somebody's going to get a touchdown that's going to be surprising. And all these pundits are going to come in saying, yep, I told you back in summer or whenever. They're going to start flapping best ever, worst ever. Yep, he didn't even get a target here first half. I told y'all he was a dud. You're going to see all sorts of stuff that's crazy. They're going to have Hall of Fame picks on rookies, Dennis, that first game. They're already going to have them fitted for their jackets. I told y'all this was the guy. And it's just going to be crazy crackers, Dennis. Even preseason, it's going to start that way. Yep, I told y'all. And folks, it's just going to be nuts. You can't let that distract. That's why your diary is there. What do you think? And put that down. Because if you don't put it down, Dennis, you're going to have selective memory. We know at the horse track, oh yeah, you remember that 100-to-1 shot. It's too much clarity. And you over sensationalize your skills, and maybe you're not really good. You just got lucky, and you need to figure that out. So now's the time. Find you some horses, look at Dennis's stuff, make this part of your diary. I agree with Dennis or I disagree. Were you right more than wrong? Maybe you need to be next year on the science of fantasy. You come on, you can be our guest expert on the need index and you can take over and we'll put you on the show. How about that? Show us your diary and say where old Dennis was really wrong. He was slapdog nuts about this guy.
And here's the thing, folks. I'm not a rookie expert. Okay. I can't break down tape and tell you that this guy is going to be the next, great player to come into the league. But I am pretty good at identifying where there's a hole on a team. And you notice I didn't put whether there's offensive line holes or anything. I just looked at the skill positions. Out of all 32 teams, there's only 2 teams that I did not mention were likely to draft a guy early. And when I say early, I mean first 3 or 4 rounds. Everybody's going to add a running back or a wide receiver by round 7. And that guy could pan out to be pretty good. We've seen some round 7. We've seen some undrafted free agent players hit it at running back. But if I look at all 32 teams, only Detroit and Houston come up without a recommendation of drafting a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, or tight end really early. Now, I think Detroit will take a wide receiver with kick return skills, but he's not going to be fantasy football viable to us in year 1. They've got their guys. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got Jamison Williams, and they've got Isaac Tisla. they don't need anybody to be cracking into those top three positions. Could they take a running back? Sure. Are they going to trust Pacheco behind Gibbs? Maybe, maybe not. But I looked at Detroit and Houston and I said they were the least likely teams to be feeding at the skill position trough. Then there are others where I think they will. You get the Redskins up here.
Yep.
Redskins need help, like wide receiver help. They're thin right now at wide receiver because they did add. I mean, they added in free agency, so they went ahead and Terry McLaurin's really solid. Okay, he's not one of my top 12 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not even top 15 or top 20, but he's solid. He's going to be one of their starters. But they didn't add a whole lot to go with him. So, there's an opening there. There's a wide open opportunity there. Now, they just drafted a tight end and they added a tight end in free agency. So I don't think they're going to go that way, even though Zach Ertz won't be back. I'd be very surprised if Washington doesn't take a wide receiver. The only reason that they wouldn't take a wide receiver in the first round is because they got a chance at taking Jeremiah Love. Is running back an area of weakness for them? Oh, no. They've got 4 guys that they can split the time with, but Jeremiah Love is a dynamic rookie. He's got a potential being something special. Now, I saw a guy on fantasy football Twitter this week who called Ashton Gianti. He said, we went from a generational talent in Ashton Gianti. We got another generational talent in Jeremiah Love. And we got 2 generational talents coming up in the 27 draft at rookie running back. And I thought about that. What are the odds of having 4 generational players over the course of 3 years? A generation is what, 20 years?
20 years.
The odds of having 4 generational players in 3 years, that's using a different. The only way you can hit that is if you hit a different definition for generational.
Yeah.
And so I like to use the word dynamic. Like, I don't know if Jeremiah Love is going to be the next Saquon Barkley or the next, name your top Bijan Robinson. I don't know. But I think he could be very good. In fact, I would put Jeremiah Love, I'd make a case for him in the top 10 in fantasy football next year, depending on where he lands. That's how good I think the kid could be. But top 10 for 1 year is not necessarily defining him as a generational talent.
Right.
But there are some teams with big holes. You got Tennessee up here. They've got a need index of 30 at running back, despite having Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, who are not bad. But they're also not, they're a consistent 50 to 60 MVP index guy.
Right.
They're not bad, but they're about average. Okay. Earlier today, we determined that 57 is median for running backs.
Right.
And that's Tony Pollard. He was at 53 last year. And he was 56 the year before, and he was 65 the year before. That's 3 years in a row under 80. So what that tells me is you can rule out a bad offensive line as the reason that he didn't hit 80. He hasn't hit 80 since 2022.
Right.
So I don't like his chances of hitting 80 this year because I still don't think their offensive line is all that great. So that's why I think there's an opening at running back.
In Tennessee.
In Tennessee. But they've got openings everywhere. They got wide receiver needs.
Right.
They could use positions on defense. They got
Right.
offensive line needs. They've got a lot of holes, which
Mhm.
is why they're drafting early. But they got a chance to draft a dynamic running back. They might go for that.
So let's kind of use running backs. Let's make sure we cover that, Dennis. So
Sure.
Washington, you think they would love to have Love, right? But you think they've got enough to cover it, so they could. I, I don't think they'll pass on him. What is their draft pick?
They're number 6 or 7, I want
I
to
wonder,
say.
would they
Let me double
draft
check
up to
that.
grab that?
It,
If
it's
they trade away and get Love, what does that say about the other ones?
yeah, so they're number 7.
But
Okay.
again, let's say they go and get number 2 or number 3, somehow get a shot at Love. What does that say about their opinions of who they have? Does that tell you, and does that tip their hand?
Yes, I think it would. I think it would, but I also don't think that they will trade up. I think
Okay.
they would only take him at 7.
That probably means they won't take him.
It's a possibility that he could fall as far as 7
Okay.
because you've got the Raiders who are taking Mendoza.
Hmm.
You got the Jets in number 2 that'll probably go defense.
Hmm.
You got Arizona in number 3 who will
Right.
probably go defense or offensive line.
Right.
Then you have the Titans at 4 who could
Right.
go running back.
Right.
You've got the Giants at 5. Running back's not the primary need,
Right.
but
Yeah.
he's a special player. Then
Okay.
you've got Cleveland at 6, who took 2 running backs last year. They're not going running back. So
Okay.
you've got to
So you're
dodge
building yeah.
Tennessee and the Giants are the 2 teams. If they pass on Love, he goes number 7 to the Commanders. I
Okay.
don't think they could pass on him.
Okay. So Tennessee, you think definitely. I mean, I see a 30 versus a 5 between the skins. So
Big difference,
you're
yes.
thinking, man, they're grabbing somebody in the first day or two, right? Are you thinking a top 3 round guy? Is
Yes,
that yeah?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they will add a running back in the first 3 rounds.
Okay.
Correct. I That's my
So
prediction.
yeah,
Yes.
so Tampa Bay's a pass, Frisco looks like Seattle 30. So
Seattle,
what's the
yes.
problem with Charbonnet? Is it injury?
Charbonnet's coming off an injury, and
And
the only
that's
other
the
back they
issue.
have is Emmanuel Wilson, or
So
they got George
a,
Halani.
a thin backup and they got an injury guy, right?
Correct.
Is that what how you're
Correct.
so
That's
again, we're
exactly it.
yeah. So it doesn't say Charbonnet is bad. It just
No,
says they're okay. Okay.
and remember,
Pittsburgh, yeah,
Charbonnet was a part timer with Ken Walker the third last year, and they both
right,
split the touches, and they both ended up about 50, 55 on
right,
MVP index each guy. So
right,
that's why there's a big need at that position.
right.
Now, that doesn't mean that need, let's say Charbonnet is
I mean,
healthy to go week
yeah,
1, he could be the guy to
yeah.
fill
But
that
he could
starting
get
spot.
hurt, and they. So this would be somebody. What I'm hearing you say that I just heard is somebody that could fly under the radar a little bit, that could step in later if Charbonnet's hurt. This looks like
Correct.
one of our better than zero potential target
Yes.
question marks
Yes.
right in here, right? Is
Correct.
okay. So folks, that's what I'm doing is notice I've thinking about our draft strategy better than zero, thinking about how since I've, you know, got to see how Dennis works here, his strategy. And this is envisioning, me. So when we're on the clock at draft night out at the expo, I'm going to be looking, and when a Seahawk is there, Dennis, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. So that's what I'm thinking there, Dennis. I'm thinking the Tennessee Titans gets my interest. Seahawks are getting my interest. Pittsburgh's a 10. So that's like, I'm not really thinking about that as something strong. And you got him as a 10. So you're not thinking about it super strong either. Is
No,
that
and I'm
kind of
saying
how
that
I'm thinking about your thinking?
that that's
Thinking about your
exactly
thinking. Yeah.
that's exactly right. And you notice I said maybe on day two. So
Okay.
that's second and third round.
Right.
That's not a priority need for
Right.
them. That's in
Well,
fact
that's why you got them
another
as a 10.
yeah, another way to look at that. Look at
Hmm.
Pittsburgh again. Look at the whole team.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you look at them on the whole team, what's their opportunity index at wide receiver? Is I guess a way of looking at it. If it's higher, it's about the same.
That's
But
the same.
there's
But
but there's
you're saying two. So
but
that
there's
tells me I'm
two
breaking the
slots.
tie.
Correct.
I would break the tie and say they need a wide receiver over a running back. That's how
And
I
in
would look at your data.
and I would go one step further to say Pittman and DK Metcalf are both the same type of big body, working the outside of the field guys. They don't really have a slot guy
Yeah. Yeah.
on the roster right now that
Right.
impresses me.
Right.
So that's where I think you would go, and they're drafting far enough down in the draft because they're not picking until what are they picking? So they're picking 21st in the
Right.
draft.
Right.
I could see a guy like Casey Concepcion going
Right.
there. I could see a guy who, again, it's a different, slightly different type of wide receiver versus what
Right.
they have right now. They got two big body guys.
Right.
And, Concepcion's not, some 5'8", 150-pound guy,
Right.
but Casey Concepcion's more of he's a little bit more of a twitchy receiver than they've got right now.
Twitchy. Okay. Yeah.
So he's 6 foot 190. He's
Yeah.
perfect size for
Twitchy.
the
Twitchy.
NFL,
I like twitchy.
but he might hit that slot need for
Hmm.
a team like Pittsburgh. Again, not a draft expert. I'm
Right.
just throwing out of what I've seen
Yeah,
over
but
the years. And
it's a beginning, Dennis. And now that
yes,
you've put this article out, this is a foundation for you and I to build on.
yeah,
Because what you're doing, folks, he's actually getting me thinking about this because I have not had any time to think about the rookies. I've been so busy working on other aspects for Dennis and I. And I like it because it's opening up doors for my thinking, right? So I want to take everything I got and add Dennis's into my head here, have a little Dennis on my shoulder telling me, stuff. Because, Dennis doesn't live down the street, he's far away. So he's a text away, but he's a busy guy. And so I'm going to be drafting 40 teams. I need a little Dennis on my shoulder to flap his little chops at me and tell me stuff. See, so that's what I'm doing. I need a little easy button, a Dennis easy button. Hit it, and yes, do this. That's what I need, Dennis. So Minnesota is a 30 for RBs. Tell me about that
yes.
story.
So you got two veteran RBs who are good but not great.
Mhm.
Aaron Jones was at one point great. And
Yes.
when I say good but not great, I'm talking fantasy football here,
Mhm.
okay? Jordan Mason has been a solid NFL football player, and Aaron Jones, even now, is a solid NFL football player.
Is it
Neither guy,
injury that's the problem or age? What do you
there's
think's going
there's
on there?
Jones is slowing down a bit. I think it's injury related and age related because this will be his age 32 season.
That's
And
pretty. pretty long in the tooth.
It's getting up there. And Jordan Mason, of course, was an undrafted free agent, so he was never a premium guy.
Mhm.
He did have a partial season with an 86 MVP in 2024, so he's got some upside to him.
Mhm.
But last year he was a 45 and a half, and Jones was only a 33 and a third. So, hey, wow, look at that. There were two different kinds of records. But, you know, both of those guys are solid. So if they go into this season with a combination of Mason and Jones from a real NFL football standpoint, it doesn't kill them.
Right.
But they've got the opportunity to, if they've got the opportunity to add somebody at the right price, not likely to be at 18 in the draft in the first round, but maybe a second round guy that falls, or maybe a third round guy that falls to them.
Right.
Those would be positions that I'd expect, them to move.
Okay.
If you compare that to wide receiver with Minnesota, Jordan Addison has been in all kinds of trouble off the field. Ty Felton is the third guy on that roster. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's your number one guy, and you're not replacing your number one guy for any need.
Right.
But Addison, if he has another off the field issue,
Mm-hmm.
then Ty Felton is all of a sudden your number two wide receiver. That's scary.
Yeah.
So
is this a little low then, or you just kind of build it in? We don't know what Addison's going to do.
We don't know what Addison's going to do. If Addison stays healthy and Addison plays up to his ability,
they need to lock him in his damn house and escort him to the field and back.
He
needs to get that going. And then after he retires, he can go and, hang out at the jailhouse.
And here's the thing is his rookie season, he was a 75 in MVP.
That's not bad for a rookie.
But that was the year that Justin Jefferson missed a bunch of games. So that's why he was inflated. The next year, when Jefferson was a 124 MVP, he dropped to a 53.
Right.
Last year, Jefferson dropped to a 53. He dropped to a 36. So I'm telling you that they would love to add at 18. I could see them going wide receiver. If the right guy falls into that spot, I could see them wanting to add.
Right. What about Jacksonville?
Jacksonville needs a running back. I'm not sold that Tootin is the answer. LaQuint Allen was also interesting looking in preseason, but never had to be relied on because Travis Etienne had such a great season. So there's a need there. It's not a severe need. It's only a 15 because I think Tootin probably is a 65 to 100 guy, is the way I would look at him, is his potential.
So let's see, Travis Etienne, Tootin, LaQuint Allen. I believe I remember talking about him a little bit, but 15, that says you're kind of what I've seen. That's kind of mid second tier for running back needs. So I'm not feeling it versus some of the other teams as far as who's got to have a running back that's in the top, 3 rounds there.
And if you look at their situation, their first draft pick in this draft doesn't come until the second round, pick 56.
She need some whiskey.
So they have a need, but they don't have the draft capital to fill that need.
The Panthers have a 5, so something must have at least tickled your fancy because I look at teams that you don't have any need for that, relative to that. So looks like there's an injury discussion with Brooks. And so I think it's based on his lack of coming forward because they drafted him pretty high and he
Yes.
just have not come through for them. So this looks like this is more of a protective kind of almost a got to have somebody to fill versus we really need, and that's why you've got him as 5.
Yeah, and if you look at Chuba Hubbard, his last 3 seasons,
Right.
last year MVP of 10, year before 100,
Hmm.
the year before that 69,
Right.
all over the place. So where is he? Is he that 100 that he was a couple of years ago when he was relied on? Gosh, I hope so. I have a lot
Right.
of Chuba Hubbard in dynasty leagues, but I gave him a 75 as a first guess for his
Hmm.
MVP this year. That's not bad. 75 would be a top 22 guy. That means he's starting every week in fantasy football.
Right.
But that's how I got to the need index of 5. It's there. If Brooks was healthy, if you could count on Brooks, he's had knee injuries 3 years in a row, basically.
Right.
If you could count on Brooks, they might not need. But AJ Dillon has also had a hard time getting on the field. But their bigger need, if you look at it, is at that second wide receiver situation. Leggett, Coker, Mechie, all will be getting playing time, but are they more of a WR3 guy than a 2? McMillan is great. He's holding down that top spot for them, but they could use another dynamic wide receiver to make McMillan's life easier because I don't think anybody's double teaming Leggett, Coker, or Mechie when
Yeah.
they're on the field. They are going to double team McMillan. Carolina really doesn't have a tight end that impresses me, but Sanders is probably going to be the guy.
And
The
they
Panthers
don't
have,
use the tight end much. I've got
they
to
don't
update my
know.
studies on that, folks. I'll have that later in the season. Kind of just generic usage for targets and touches and things. And Carolina has just never used a tight end a lot
And
that
that's
I've saw.
why, no, not in recent years. And that's why I don't think that that is a position where they're going to spend draft capital because they've got holes elsewhere that need to be filled. And
Right.
again, every team's got defensive holes. They got lineman holes.
Right.
They might, at a particular point in the draft, those
Right.
might be more important than a skill position. I'm only looking at the skill positions
Right.
with this approach.
So last is the Cardinals. You got them again at a 5. So I'm trying to 5 edition possible, but not certainly. So I don't know if it's the age, the injuries. I remember Benson and Connor. So it looks to me like, yeah, injury. So it looks like you're kind of thinking, man, they may need something, but it's not ringing the bell. Like, for instance, Seattle and
Correct.
who they are.
Correct.
That I'm kind of weighing that. And Seattle and Tennessee, when I've gone through your data, Dennis, that those are hitting in my head a little bit. So I'm going to pay a little extra attention this, and I know you're going to update the opportunity index to a probability model for us, and we'll be
Yes.
ready to go. But that's how I'm reading some of this is you're including. So folks, I think Dennis is pointing to the way that is there a genuine need versus there's injury issues and other things that says there might be a need versus there may be other needs outside of running backs. That's kind of the three buckets I've taken across your article, Dennis. Three main buckets. I mean, you could branch out,
Yes.
and
Yes.
tie break. But folks, that what I think, and Dennis, that's probably something we need an article from you on how you would update the dentist diary, because I know how I do it,
Yes.
but I'm just wondering how we probably need to strengthen that a little more than just the one. I did a video and whatnot on that, and I'm just, I'm thinking that that might be something, if not this year, next, we need to kind of update, in the age of AI, what is the diary telling us, or what bucket should we be filling in our diary? But that's what I just took from your article on the running back.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair way to look at it. And in the case of Arizona, the reason I said it's possible but not a certainty
Right.
is Connor's getting old.
Yes.
Benson's had a trouble with injury, and Tyler Algier is a great second running back on a team. I don't know if I would want to lean on him as my primary starter for 20 touches a game. I
Yeah.
want him coming off the bench to get 10 to 15 touches, maybe.
Right.
So that's that. But Arizona pick has really good draft capital because they got the third pick, the 34th, and the 65th.
That's not
So
bad.
there's a possibility that they can fill either that wide receiver and or running back slot in rounds 2 and 3
Hmm.
and be just pleased as can be. Now you notice for Arizona, there's an opportunity index for quarterback as well.
Yes, I didn't, and there's not a lot of quarterbacks called
No,
on.
no, I did not put an opportunity index for any other position at quarterback on here because I assumed Vegas was taking Mendoza.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they would have had a real high. If they don't take, if I don't count that they're going to take Mendoza, and I put the base opportunity index for them right now would be a 45. So that's why they're taking Mendoza. It's a 45, and they have the first pick in the draft. If Arizona had the first pick in the draft, they're probably taking Mendoza as well. Like they're Jacoby Brissett had a great fantasy football year last year,
Hmm.
but he doesn't have that as his defining, like 108 last year. The year before, in only a couple of games, minus 50.
Hmm.
The previous year that he was a full player in 10 or more games, he had a 45. So is he a 45 or is he a 108 as a
Hmm.
player? That's why I put him at a 70. I just said, I think 108 was too high last year. That was his career year. I don't know if he lives back up to that. So I picked a number in the middle of his last two full seasons and said, yeah, he's probably closer to a 70. And that's how I came up with an index of 10. Now, if we see something crazy and Vegas trades away that first pick to somebody who wants Jeremiah Love,
Hmm.
not likely, but you never
They
know it's going to
could.
happen. And then the Jets say, we don't really want Mendoza because we want to go fix up our defense first.
Hmm.
Arizona all of a sudden gets a shot at 3,
Right.
but that's not likely to happen. Now, could Arizona trade that draft capital and trade back up into the end of the first round and grab a defensive player at 3 and then grab Ty Simpson or another quarterback? That's a possibility. That's why I thought Arizona needed to be in the discussion And as I was writing this, Jacoby Brissett also talked about holding out if he doesn't get starting quarterback money. So
Oh, I
that
haven't heard that.
that yeah, so that drops him down to only having Gardner Minshew on the roster.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's bad because I was
if he holds out,
really hoping Brissett would get a play so we could get him cheap and be a great two to have.
yes, and that's the problem right now, is that if he holds out and Arizona says, ah,
Yeah.
tough cookies, we're not paying you
Mhm.
quarterback one money,
Right.
because he wants quarterback one money for 2 years, is, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Well, their intent is to probably draft a quarterback next year. It's supposed to be a good class
Yeah.
for quarterbacks. So they probably will be in the running.
Mhm.
Probably will not see a great season out of Arizona this year. So they might be in the running for one of the quarterbacks next year.
Right.
If they don't give Brissett
Right.
starter money for 2 years and they have to rely on Minshew, they might arrange to bring in another quarterback. Who knows? But that's kind of what the thinking
Was
of
on
what
that.
went into this whole process for
Yeah.
now.
So, folks, I would again go through the article. I think I would hit it positionally, kind of go through what Dennis is saying, generic, looking for his indexes, see where he's higher and lower, get a feel, read that. And then if you're really serious and really between now and the draft, I'd bug Dennis on X or something, ask him some questions, you know, uh, uh, get his get his hot dog index going there a little bit and see what you can come up with here. I don't know if Vegas has futures. Do they let you bet on who's getting what and where? Probably not, but I don't know.
There is first, you can bet
You
on
can
who's
make
going to
some
be a
bet.
first round pick.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go,
So
folks. So there,
some guys will move
Dennis
up
is
into the
probably a
first.
millionaire. He just doesn't know it with his thinking here. So anyway, Dennis, I enjoyed the article. Actually, I enjoyed going through it just like I did. And now I'm going to rest a little bit. And next week, I'm going to skim through it again. But I'm going to let you do the heavy lifting on this because I know you're going to follow up with some more probability based opportunity index, and I'm looking forward to that. But it's a great article, very innovative in how you're doing things. And now we have it on paper. And now we can adjust our diaries. And I think people listening are really going to get an advantage on if they're really into drafts, maybe stump some of their drunken friends at the draft party they'll have, maybe win a few, maybe put some whiskey up or some who can get the most first round players or make you some money here, you know, uh, get real here. And I enjoyed it, Dennis. And now that I've heard you talk, my my clarity is better. But I think you should listen to this, then go read his article carefully. And I would do it position by position first and get a feel for a quarterbacks, running backs, tight ends. It looked like wide receivers were the biggest. There was a lot more discussion that I saw there. So I don't know if you want to end it with anything. One
Yeah.
last question. On the teams that you did WR1 and 2 versus the teams you only did WR2, why was that? You see,
because they
what was
didn't have
driving
a
you to do that?
because they didn't have an existing player that I thought was going to hit 80 or higher in
Okay,
MVP.
okay,
And that's how they earned a spot for that WR1 and WR2.
okay.
And that's very rare because most of the teams
Mhm.
have a guy who should hit an 80. or higher in
Hmm.
MVP,
Okay.
because 80 or higher
Hmm.
is
Is
just
your number.
22nd, 22nd,
Yeah.
22nd or better. And most of the teams
Hmm.
should have, I mean, there's 22 out of 32 teams. You can do the math.
Right.
Those are the teams that should have that WR1 slot hit. But many of the teams, many of those 10 that
Hmm.
are going to fail to hit
Hmm.
that mark going in at the end of the season,
Hmm.
going into the season, you might have 5 or 6 of those teams that have a guy that you would expect to hit that mark, and he didn't, either due to injuries or just underperformance.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that was good. I believe they should read what you have to say, then watch the draft. So I think you kind of given us some things to think about. I really enjoyed it, and one of your stronger articles, I think. I think it's going to be a foundation for the need index. I think next year, let's call it the need index.
I
That
like
that
that.
that
I actually,
describes that better.
yes, it really does. And I use the word opportunity because it's the first
Right.
start of building that. But you're right. It really typically,
And if you
more,
could come out a little earlier, we could get a little hand. Dennis, get to work now. You don't need to work and get real money. We're earning fantasy money here.
there you go. But it'll be interesting to see how this works out.
Yeah.
But again, you don't know if you're going to be good at something until you make a commitment to trying to predict it. I know I won't hit all the positions because there is an unlimited draft capital and there
Yeah.
are unlimited holes on some of
Yeah.
these teams.
Yeah.
So there will be teams that have to make a decision to go defense or
Right.
lineman
Right.
ahead of a skill player. So I'm not going to be 100% correct.
Right.
But what my goal would be is I'd be pretty happy if out of the 32 teams that
Right.
I hit about 25 teams that they drafted one of these players that I said was a need, just one in the first 3 rounds. If they do that, then I know I've got a pretty good handle on team strength and weakness here.
Hmm.
And especially if Detroit and Houston go the first 3 rounds without picking a skill player,
Hmm.
then that's 2 hits for those team, both teams as well. So there's chances of hitting, all 32. I'd be happy if I hit 25 of the 32. That's where I'm setting the bar.
I'm just liking a foundational process, folks. That's what we're doing. You're seeing these kind of things like a couple of years ago when I did the COM data and the Bush LR and we talked about the better than zero and the opportunity index. All these things, they're not the finished product. They're
No.
a process. And that's part of learning is you need to develop your processes and that just gives, I think it gives you an advantage and it makes you have to answer to yourself if you do a diary.
Yes.
You've
Yes.
got to be honest with yourself because your brain will trick you. Just look at cognitive biases. So this is an opportunity for Dennis's opportunity index or his need index, and we're seeing it for the first time. And I'm curious now at the end of the season, as we look back here, we should do that, Dennis. Just kind of, where were you right? Kind of a report card on your need index. Let's see how it did this year. And I'm curious how that will turn out. But grade yourself, and that's what the diary can do for you.
And I do think that, this is something I've thought about in the past. And I've even scribbled some notes down before the draft
Mhm.
because that helps me prepare for if I see a guy go to a certain team. Oh, this is a guy I got to pay attention to for fantasy football.
Right.
But but putting it down on paper and putting it into the public domain,
Yes.
it's holding myself accountable for
Yes.
what I put down. I can go back to it 5 years from now
Yes.
and show the progression of, am I getting better? Am I getting worse at this concept? And again, understanding that teams aren't just drafting offensive players. So
Yes.
they may choose to invest their draft capital elsewhere for all the right reasons,
Mhm.
which is why I'm not going to be 32 of 32 in the first,
And
because I'm
I would think, Dennis, if you included a generic defense need, that might
yes,
correlate with what I'm saying. If you could bring that in, that might help clarify things down the road.
yes, very much so. And what I will grade is two different ways here. If they first three rounds, I will give myself a hit, a full point, if one of these positions of need are actually taken. And I'll give myself a half point if they take somebody in rounds 4, 5, or 6,
Right.
because they're fitting the need. I'm not giving 7 or undrafted free agents any basis, even though the guys like Brock Purdy and Kyle Monanjay and Isaiah Pacheco have hit on the 7th round. I'm not going to take credit for that, but I will take half credit if they're in that 4th through 6th round um, hit as well. So it'll be interesting to grade this and to see if I get better or worse next year at this time. But this was the first process starting to think in probabilities for what really matters, which is, do we take these guys in
Yeah.
redraft fantasy football or not? I always look at the rookies because I'm in enough dynasty leagues that I need to make those draft picks. And it's more, we go 4 rounds, so that's 40 players deep. I need to have a lot of guys that I take a shot at. Quite often there are a lot of running backs that I'll take a shot at
Yeah.
later rounds, a few quarterbacks every once in a while. I got a couple of shares of Brock Purdy I took in the 4th round of rookie drafts, but you're going to hit a lot less often on your 48th best rookie is not likely to be, fantasy football league winner,
Yeah.
for you. But if he lands on a roster, that's a good thing. But it'll be interesting to grade this and see how I do. But very interesting first process here as we try to look at the rookies in fantasy football.
I agree. I'm ready to get back to work, Dennis.
So head on over to the sportsaffiliation.com. Listen to our sister podcast, the Data Lab, where the professor kind of went against, we took on AI, folks. We
Yeah.
took on AI.
Yeah.
Very interesting article that the professor did, one of many. So head over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check that out. Check out my opportunity article as well. And of course, check out and like and subscribe on the Sports Affiliation YouTube channel, please. We want to make sure that you listened and watch all of the great shows over there. And come on back here next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.